So first of all, let me introduce myself, and we'll let the panel introduce themselves as well. So we're here today to talk about a dialogue between video advertising buyers and sellers. So there are many of the companies at this conference are building media businesses. There are also many vendors and others supporting those companies. But for those of us who are trying to build a media business, advertising is obviously a huge component of our monetization strategy, and it complements other things like subscription and pay-per-view and so on. But nonetheless, advertising is something that is going to fuel a huge portion of this industry that we're building here. So we want to get together and talk about video advertising with a range of perspectives. That's been my goal in organizing this panel. So we have people here who sit in the agency and work very closely with the brands and are the ones actually making the spending decisions about how to spend their budgets and how to spend their money on digital video. And we have others who are on the publisher side and who are currently building advertising businesses as new media companies. And we have some folks in between who are actually building networks that are connecting buyers and sellers together. So my name is Ted Greninger. I'm a co-founder and vice president of product at AdaptTV. AdaptTV is an online video platform. It provides an ad server. It also provides an exchange, the AdaptTV marketplace, to connect buyers and sellers together. Let me briefly let the panelists introduce themselves, and then I'm going to give a few introductory slides so we can sort of have some motivation for the rest of our talk. So let's start with you, Julie. Or actually, I'm sorry, on the other end, from the top, Radek. Over there.
Hi, I'm Radek Zemel. I work for Microsoft, which I think you guys know of. I'm a product manager in our Microsoft advertising group in the TV video division. So my primary focus is on a video network we have, but I work very closely with our MSN, MSNBC publisher teams, as well as our Xbox and mobile teams on our video offerings.
Great. And Kelly, you're next.
Yeah. Kelly Wenger, and actually, we're rebranding ourselves as Digimogul. We're an entertainment network, but our proprietary site is Directors Live. We also have an indie music site called GorillaLake.com, and we're in the process of building out a couple more sites. And we're primarily indie entertainment focused.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Brian?
Brian Tu, Break Media. I run West Coast sales. We create and distribute content over 140 million monthly unique viewers. So I think we created this year alone about 5,000 pieces of original content, some of which is branded entertainment, and obviously the other is original content that's sponsored. We also have a number of kind of male-focused sites like Break.com, Made Man, Gamefront.
Yeah, great. And Julie?
Hello, everyone. Julie Berger from Horizon Media. I manage the digital practice out of the West Coast office, just down the street, literally. And I oversee a variety of different clients, including Jack in the Box, Crown Imports, which is Corona, Modelo, Pacifico, Mike's Hard Lemonade, Southern California Honda, and quite a few others.
Excellent, thank you. So just to give a sense so you guys all understand, Julie here works in the agency world, so she's responsible for buying a lot of this media. Brian and Kelly are both responsible for selling a lot of this media, so they're on the exact other side. And Radek really gets to see both sides as a video ad network within Microsoft. Okay, so let me show you a couple of slides here. Let's see if this works. So I'm very excited actually about the fact that, whoops, not that one. Thought it was going to work so nicely. So I'm very excited that today I can share with you some information, some new data that we've just released from the AdaptTV and Digiday State of the Video Industry Report. So simultaneous with this conference, my head of sales, Jason Schulman, was in New York speaking at Digiday and presented this just a few hours ago, and it's the first time we've sort of taken the wraps off. We do this every year, and so we're going to be able to tell you how buyers and sellers are thinking about this, and I want this to be fodder for the discussion that we're going to have here with the panelists. And I'm more than happy to share more information, and by the way, the whole thing can be downloaded from www.adapt.tv. So the first slide here, I think, shows something that is non-controversial here. People are going to spend more and more money in online video advertising, and if you look at even last year, if you look at last year how brands and agencies thought, that's the brands 2010 and the agencies 2010, they all thought they might spend more money, they might spend less money in digital video. We can now look back and see that they spent a lot more money in digital video. Now when they're looking forward to the next year, they're very confident. They're pretty much 100% confident they're going to spend a lot more money next year than they are this year. That's the 2011 bar there. And we also see in the Adapt2U marketplace, we've had over 2010 and 2011, as we've been building our marketplace, just tremendous growth in revenue, basically going from 0 to a very sizable number that I can't speak about publicly, unfortunately. And where is this money coming from? Because there's a limited pot of money out there being spent in advertising. Well, people used to think and talk a lot about the fact that it was going to be cannibalizing television advertising spending. And if you look at what people think here in 2011, is that it's actually going to be cannibalizing display advertising spending as much, if not more, than television advertising spending. So I think that's an interesting change in people's point of view about this. And they're starting, now that digital video is really here and established, I think they're seeing it as something that's possibly replacing some of their display spending. So last year we asked people what was the most important objective of the campaign. And if you're going to be successful in building an ad business, you better understand what your clients want, right? So last year they said they really wanted brand reach, brand awareness. And this year they say that, that they're much more interested in brand engagement than they are in brand awareness. So many of you may be scratching your heads and saying, what is brand engagement and how do I deliver that to my advertisers? Well, we're going to talk about it. Another thing that we asked people was what ad formats they believe are valuable. I think it's interesting actually to note here, the thing that's interesting about this question is, or the answers to this question is that if I had guessed, I would have said everyone would say, well, we're clearly interested in pre-roll. That's what we like. That's what we understand. But they didn't just say that. They said we're also interested in interactive pre-roll and rich media overlays. So the point here is that the buyers, the agencies and brands, are very interested in getting more out of their video spend than just pure exposure or awareness. They would like the users to have some degree of interactivity. And it's also interesting to note that publishers still aren't providing the service. At least only a small number of them are providing the service. And we've also noticed growth. It's very hard to read the numbers here, but this has grown from, I think, about 8% to about 22% of the campaigns running through the Adapt2U marketplace are asking for interactivity as well. So that's a big change for us. And the other thing we asked people was, how do you target your video? And we were surprised to see that demographic targeting was one of the top things mentioned. I think last year that answer, I don't have the numbers for last year here, but I don't think that would have been the case. And that's a change, that's something new. And so I think it's very interesting for us to talk about what does that mean? What is demographic targeting, first of all? There's a couple answers to that question. And how can publishers really support that or support that need from buyers? And finally, a couple last things. What are the most important factors in considering which video sites to work with? Very surprising to me to see targeting capabilities right at the top. It's not sort of reach, it's not the audience they have or measurability, all of which I would think would be very important. It's actually what kind of targeting can they provide me? And the good news, just to end this little portion of the talk here, is that the CPMs are very healthy and in fact growing. That the market is becoming efficient in that premium content commands very high CPM, mid-tier content is demanding medium CPMs, and low-end content is demanding low CPMs. So if you want to buy content at $5 or buy video advertising at $5, you can. If you want to buy video advertising at $30, you can, and you're going to get different things. One question I think is interesting is, what is the difference in value to the brand or to the advertiser from getting these different kinds of content, these different kinds of placements? Okay, so takeaways, obviously tremendous growth. We're stealing from display. It's considered to be somewhat of a substitute for display. Brand engagement is something very important that we want to talk about here. The interactivity is growing in importance. Audience targeting or the ability to target demographically is something considered very important by brands. And our CPMs continue to grow. So I want that to be sort of a backdrop for all of us, and we can go back to those slides if we want to. But but I want to start with sort of the basics here. So I actually, because we want to start with the buy side and move down to the publisher and understand, I'd like to talk to, or ask Julie a little bit, first of all, who's spending this money on digital video and why? Why are they buying digital video relative to the other media they could be spending money on? And I'm going to sit down.
I would hope that everyone's spending money in video. I think that it's incredibly valuable. I think more brand advertisers are finding the value. Depending on which brand you're talking to, many of them see it as an extension to their broadcast buy, or cable buys. Many see it as an efficient way to reach a particular audience. But then I think the even more advanced advertisers find a way and believe that the interactivity is incredibly important, and that's the engagement piece that you were talking about. So unlike television, with the exception of Shazam and Into Now and things that are a little bit more interactive now, there's very little ways to confirm that your message has actually been seen and driving some sort of interactivity. So whether it's sharing some content, watching a trailer, downloading a coupon, there's definitely more ways that we can track that it's actually performing to some degree.
So targetable, interactive, so more engaging experience, and then better tracking as well, right?
And then extension to any sort of broadcast spends that they might be augmenting.
Yeah.
So many of them are looking at an extension of TRPs. That may be a little unfamiliar for this room. I'm not
But
sure
yeah,
about.
people who don't know what TRP is, it's a way of measuring the size of the audience that you're reaching.
So typically a broadcast buyer buys on a TRP basis.
Targeted rating point.
Exactly. So there's gross rating points, targeted rating points. In digital, I think we look at things and the methodology a little bit different, but there's certainly a way that we can prove that it's augmenting those TV dollars.
Interesting. Cool. So, there are a lot of asks there, right? There's a lot of hope and expectation on what digital video can provide. Do you feel like when clients are running the campaigns today that they're finding it valuable? So they have this, they're buying digital video because they believe that they can get these values. Are they actually feeling like the campaigns are successful?
Again, I would say that it would depend on who you're asking and what sort of methodology you included in that campaign. So hopefully you're doing a third-party study as well. If there isn't any built-in interactivity, maybe you're doing a research study that asks a question pre and post. Did you watch this? Did you intend to go see the movie, buy the beer, whatever it was, and then did you buy the beer? So we can really correlate it to, at the end of the day, they want to drive sales of whatever they're selling. So can we actually prove that it's driving that offline purchase, that subscription, whatever it may be?
Sounds good. Thanks, Julie. So let's see, for those of you, let's hear from the sell side of the house a little bit. So advertisers they send you these RFPs, requests for proposals, and they have big goals, big aspirations for the digital video spend that they're coming with. And we heard about sort of the targeting, the measurability, engagement, complementing other media, other buys, and so on. I just want to hear it maybe in turn, kind of from each of you, when you come back to them, which of those things do you think you can deliver on really well, and how do you do it?
Well, I think we have the scale, obviously. Video consumption has increased tenfold over the last couple of years with broadband penetration, and in every single household, everyone has DSL or whatever it may be. And I think that video consumption is becoming such a big part of how we get online, consume content. And in line with that is this advertising falls in line with following the audience. And so we're seeing like scale in terms of a brand message, and then interactivity. It's like, how do you measure that? How do you build programs that are really speaking to that specific advertiser? So it really depends on who you're talking to, what brand is they're trying to promote, what kind of campaign, and what the metrics are. Yeah. So I think that we look at kind of every campaign on a case-by-case basis, but they'll have a piece that it's just kind of pure reach. They'll have a piece that maybe have branded entertainment or other kind of more interactive components to it. And also, now video is a lot more standardized, whereas before, even before, it's like a year ago, it was the Wild Wild West.
Right. So let's put a pin in branded entertainment, because I think that's a fascinating topic, and I want to try to come back to it if we have time. But let's assume we're dealing with just sort of paid placement for now. So brand comes into you and they say, hey, my objective is brand engagement. And actually, either one of you, Kelly or Brian, can jump in. But how do you come back to them with something of value that helps them achieve their branded engagement?
So I'm going to have to really let Brian speak to this, and I feel like later I'm going to be the one to talk maybe about exchanges and the remnant stuff, because we're a really young site and we're really monetizing.
Right. Yeah, I forgot to mention,
With the
these two
networks
businesses,
and
these two
with-
media
yeah.
businesses are in different phases, right?
Exactly.
Brian's got how many addressable uniques?
140 million unique viewers a month. Wow. And then
It's a lot of people. I think there's only
Yeah.
200 cookies in the United States. So, 200 million. So anyway, so Kelly, let's jump into that then, just to hear from you a little bit. So when you're a young site, so Directors Live has a lot of great content. You're building an audience. Your audience is obviously smaller than
Exactly.
Breaks. How do you go about starting to make money off of advertising, right? It's sort of, you need to have a certain scale before people like Julie here are going to talk to you, right? I mean, Julie's got limited hours in her day.
Yeah.
What do you do?
So it is really challenging because we are starting to get a few RFPs and some direct campaigns. And then in terms of what's the metric, or, you know, how do we measure success when, in terms of our organic traffic, you know, how do I target this? Oh no, you know, it is a challenge, and we see ourselves, you know, we're obviously getting there by doing really targeted marketing buys and social media, and we're growing, you know, as quickly as we can.
That's for you
And
guys to build your own audience.
Yeah, and that's for us to build our own audience, right? And, you know, but right now, I would say, you know, that's something that we're trying to achieve, I would say, in Q4, by Q4 of next year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, you know, why I'm here today is really to, you know, even on this panel, is to learn, you know, from Brian, somebody who's been around a little bit longer. But I think that...
You can do a private tutorial.
Yeah, exactly.
afterwards.
So but I want to say right now, with the campaigns that I'm managing, you know, right now, in Q4, the toughest thing is the metric, because each campaign has a different metric. So
Let's talk about
and
some
a
of those
different
metrics.
goal.
Let's get really,
Yeah.
really concrete. So
So,
some campaigns, so in the old days, right, everyone seemed to be happy to hit a certain click-through rate,
yeah.
okay? So I assume, you know, and actually I participate in this business too, so I still see there are a lot of campaigns that come along, and really that's their notion of health. Does anyone want to jump in, or Radhika, you haven't gotten a chance to comment on anything so far, but, you know, which of these metrics, why do different advertisers look for these different metrics, and you know, which of them sort of have value?
I think if you ask each individual advertiser, they're going to give you a different story. But at the end of the day, they're trying to tell a story to their advertiser. And they're looking for something to...
Like even the agency's trying to tell a story to their client.
Yeah, the agency's looking for something to tell the advertiser as a story. And that might be, you know, they might have heard, hey, you're doing online video. That's great. That was great last year, but what is it this year? So they're going to look for completion rate, something else to tell a story that why my campaign was better than the agency down the street, and why I'm giving you a better campaign overall.
Right.
So I think it's always a focus around a story that they can bring back to their advertiser, and a simple story. So a lot of times they'll go back to GRP or TRP because that's something the advertiser understands, and that's a convenient kind of metric.
And that's just saying literally, I reached this big of an audience. I
Yeah.
hit this many people with my message.
Yeah, but to differentiate
doesn't
yourself
mean that they
versus
saw it.
TV.
That's true. So separate issue. We can put a pin in that one too. Maybe like the question of whether or not that was actually a viewable impression, right? Which I was at the IAB yesterday, at AdOps Summit in New York, and that was about half the conversation, I think, talking about viewable impressions.
Real view and things like that.
Yes, and
So,
RealView
yes,
came
yes.
up about 10 times. They're a small vendor that tries to measure viewability of impressions. In video, it's still an issue, although I think it's far less of a problem than it is in display. I think more of the video inventory is viewable by nature of video. It's harder to kind of run an ad out of sight. I mean, it happens, but anyway, it's a good point. So you're talking. So some of the metrics you brought up. So you brought up. I mentioned click-through rate. You brought up completion rate. What are some other kinds of metrics that a brand advertiser might care about?
sharing,
Sharing rate.
Sharing functionality,
we
yeah.
talk about, I think
Pass
a big, pass along. I think that a big metric these days is when people talk about brand engagement, sometimes they allude to kind of how many people are actually talking to our brands on a daily basis, whether it's following them on Twitter or Facebook or whatever that may be. But So as he was
So how do you guys facilitate that? Do you have your own sort of units that you're selling that you baked into your video player so they have a
Sharing
like
functionality.
icon or a whatever?
Yeah, I think that for the most part, from just a platform standpoint, of course you're going to have every type of viewing or sharing option out there, whether it's email or liking or what have you. But it's really understanding and talking to the brand early on of what are your metrics, what are you really trying to measure. And an RFP will only tell you so much. They'll have you'll have the story, you'll take a look at an RFP and saying, okay, here are the 5 objectives they have, but having a conversation, a dialogue with the agency and the client and really understand what they're trying to get out of it at the end of the day, because, and again, it's going to be all over the board of talking to advertiser.
How about this notion of just people talk about engagement, right? What's your engagement rate? And it's a very wonderful sounding term, right? We all want
High engagement
people to
rates.
engage with our content and with our brand and our advertisements. What does that actually mean? What action are users taking that's engagement?
Could be the time spent. So rolling over, it could be, again, watching a trailer, watching a piece of content, sharing a piece of content, interacting if it's a game or something like that, so gameplay, time spent.
Right, so it's like a catch-all phrase. It's sort of the user somehow taking action or being involved with your content.
So not passively sitting by, but actively.
With my IAB hat on, I'll mention that engagement is not something that the IAB has a standardized definition of, right? There's no
That
notion
is
of
true.
engagement there yet, and maybe there will be someday.
Which is a challenge for video in our industry.
Yeah,
that
challenge
there's
for
no
you, right? Because you're trying to
standardization.
go and buy across all these different inventory
Very
sources
true.
and say that somehow I got a certain engagement rate, and that means different things at different
Yeah,
places.
and so when clients want certain measurability, that we sort of agree to pre-planning, we're going to measure cost per engagement, let's say, and you go out and you RFP and you run a campaign and you find out that you're actually not even measuring the same things
Right.
with all your partners. So hopefully you've done your due diligence and you've done that up front, and you are sort of tracking the same things. But when we've got so many different the nomenclature is so different,
Yeah.
it's very hard for us all to be speaking the same language.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. We talked about metrics and engagement and so on. How about targeting, right? So I think targeting was one of the things we saw up there, that when a buyer is coming in to choose which media sources they're going to work with, they say targeting is one of the most important things that they could, for choosing their vendor. So, we can all, so first of all, let me lay out what the kinds of targeting are, unless somebody else wants to. Does anyone want to take that one?
I mean, there's demo targeting, content by category.
So demographic meaning generally
Yep.
age, gender, and income, or age and gender even.
Yep.
Yep.
Content targeting, what category of content, video content you're going to be around. Behavioral targeting, based on whatever
Yeah.
data you're pulling that from. Geographic, I
Yeah.
mean, list goes on and
It's good,
on.
it's good. And some of those, when you talked about demographic and behavioral, some of those can use cookies, right? And sort of the state of the art, obviously, in display advertising is to be using cookies to do all that kind of targeting, and that's how you do behavioral retargeting and also demographic targeting. What do you think brand advertisers really want? That was a laundry list. Someone else take a cut at, like, what kinds of targeting are really important for an advertiser and why?
Well, I think they'd like to do more behavioral to a certain extent, but limiting factors are scale. A lot of times you just can't get enough, inventory of a particular, really specific behavioral target segment.
And let me draw the lines for the audience here, just I think we all know. When you try to use cookies to do something like behavioral targeting, typically the percent of cookies that have the particular attribute you're looking for is going to be relatively low. So even if, for example, you went to a vendor and said, hey, I'd like to buy men and women, right? I'd like to buy the gender piece of information from your cookie. It depends on the vendor, but you might get a 10% overlap or a 20% overlap with your audience, meaning that 80% of the people are an unknown gender. So it doesn't really help you if your goal is to try to get reach
Scale just
and
isn't
scale
there, yeah.
of awareness for your brand.
It gets worse when you're like, hey, I want pet food buyers or something like that. When you're looking for like intent-based targeting,
Yeah.
which is specifically what, they know the advertiser is looking for. Even on the largest networks, there's only so much you can get. And of what you can get, it is way more prohibitive than just doing a demo target.
So someone draw the lines for me, because this is crazy that advertisers say this is the number one thing they care about from a media source, and yet we're saying is it doesn't really work. It doesn't meet their needs to just go out there and buy some cookies and try to target a particular demographic group.
I think there's incredible value in data. I think it hasn't come to fruition yet because of the scalability issue. Performance really hasn't panned out.
Right.
So I think that content oftentimes remains king.
Yeah.
Affinities, associating your brand in premium places where you will find passionate consumers who will more likely engage in your product or message.
Yeah. So it sounds like data is aspirational. Like people would like to be able to do very precise user targeting, and I think that's the holy grail for a lot of brand marketers out there. But there are certain technical barriers and also sort of the privacy and policy kind of barriers that we can talk about. And that data is valuable for reporting or for analytics, so you can understand what's happening with your ads out there in the wild. But that in the near term, plain old sort of content-based targeting, where you are hitting your audience by finding content that your audience has an affinity for, is probably going to continue to be very important. Would you guys all agree with that?
I would say it's not necessarily content always. I think there's a certain measure of brand safety via the content you're buying. So people will buy a premium brand like MSN, MSNBC, like those kinds, because there's an associated brand safety there that TV has. TV pretty much is safe across the board, so you don't have to worry about it as much.
Yeah.
Online, you've got to worry a little bit more. So you don't want to present your advertiser with a bunch of lists of sites that they don't know about and that they're worried about their brand being associated with. So associating yourself with a premium brand kind of doesn't make you have to go through that explanation to your advertiser. What I see happen a lot of times is pretty much like stacking a campaign with a portion of it being at a high premium spend and another portion with a higher reach, like a network or something like that. So you're kind of achieving both levels of a campaign with the entire spend.
I think, again, it goes back to what the advertiser's objective is. So if you're trying to distribute a ton of content, then it doesn't have to be quite as premium, right? So you might use sort of that tiered approach, but there are still plenty of brand advertisers that, regardless of being associated with an MSNBC or a CNN, they could be running alongside a competitor. They could be alongside content or an article that just, could concern them quite a bit.
Sure.
So those environments still aren't safe enough for some brands.
Right.
So they want more control.
Right.
And they want to know that they're going to be on this pod, with this particular 15-second message, and it's going to be within this comedy content on Hulu, let's say.
Yeah. So this presents a huge opportunity, challenge and an opportunity for those of us on the sell side of the industry, in that we hear that these guys want to spend more money, right? That's great. It's great news for all of us. They would like to buy our ad space, and this is valuable product for them, but that there's some gaps, there's some things that are missing, and some concerns that have to be dealt with before we can. I want to go back to Kelly. You haven't gotten a chance to jump in for a while. And then fairly soon we're going to break and have some questions from the audience. Since you're sort of in the hot seat for a smaller growing enterprise here, and currently the direct sales, I presume, are a smaller part of your business. I'm not sure. I wonder.
Yeah, I'd say like 10%.
Okay, yeah, great. But I have a feeling there are a bunch of folks out here who are in that boat with you. So what, what is your approach to sort of increasing your overall revenue in the short run as you sort of build up your own direct sales?
So for us, I would say number one is really maintaining relationships with every single ad network out there.
Yeah.
And relationships are key, obviously, in business. So, weekly, daily contact, and just staying abreast of what's going on out there. And
can you be a little more specific about how ad networks work? So, in the old days, ad networks would, in the old days, the good old days, when ad networks first arrived on the scene, they would rep They would represent a bunch of smaller sites, right? That's how they worked in
Yeah.
display typically. And it made sense. You would get this, it was like outsourcing your
Yeah,
ad sales. And that changed over time, and I would presume that's not how you're working with ad networks today.
It's very different with video. And so, I mean, if I can be so bold, the platform that we are using is Adapt. And so that enables us to manage our own relationships with the ad networks. And then the layer that we use to effectively really fill and optimize is the Adapt TV marketplace as the, I would say, you know, that's really helped us, you know, monetize and optimize. And then, you know, in terms of, you know, backfill, we obviously have, you know, Google and SpotX and a couple of those plugged in. And then I'm obviously, you know, as best I can, aggressively pursuing, you know, direct deals as I can as we're growing our audience and, you know, trying to, you know, we have a really small team, but, you know, we have, you know, I'd say a couple of, we've implemented some really successful campaigns, you know, over the past few months. And, you know, I mentioned that we are working with some indie artists, indie filmmakers, and so we've gotten some great deals and we've been successful there. But I would say, you know, as a whole, we've been really lucky that we had some really premium content from these indie artists and filmmakers, and we just got in the right space at the right time. And because of that, you know, our inventory has been desirable, you know, for these networks and within the exchange, and we were able to just like plug and go. And so my recommendation to, you know, anybody who's out there and getting started with video is just, you know, to build the relationships with the networks because, you know, as Tag mentioned, you know, things are growing, they're going to continue to grow, and just to really, you know, stay on top of those relationships and to manage them. And, you know, to get opted into any exchange that you can as backfill. And then as you're growing your audience and those opportunities come for direct, you know, add that in as a layer. I think, you know, it's a pretty simple equation.
Sounds good. It
Yeah.
doesn't sound simple at all, actually. It's probably a lot of work.
No, it's a lot of work. It is, but I mean, it's working for us, and I'm confident that if we keep plugging at it, you know, this time next year, hopefully, we'll be able
Yeah.
to do the things that we want and, you know, have more direct deals come in our way.
I think smaller media outlets actually can have a very compelling offering to agencies. Tell me if you agree with this. This is a controversial statement. If they have very focused audiences.
Mm-hmm.
So if, for example, like at Directors Live, you guys have this like devoted fan base of people who love indie films or whatever
Yeah.
it is, and then when someone comes out with a new indie film, who are they going to want to, you know, have their sponsorship trailer run on? It's going to be sites like yours, right? I mean, it makes a lot of sense. So for those of you out there who are building very focused businesses or building small businesses, the more you can focus them, obviously, the more valuable your inventory is to an advertiser, and the higher CPMs you can command, and the more attention you're going to get from the agencies that represent the, you know, the brands that want to approach that particular audience.
Yes, that's also what I want to talk about really quick is content, is that we just really chose a really niche market as, you know, indie film and indie music. And obviously it's not going to, you know, grow that quickly overnight, but I feel that, you know, over the next few years, you know, there are a lot of people who are interested in indie music and indie film, so
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to go away,
Sure.
you know, tomorrow, so.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think an important way to think about the content side also is a lot of agencies use it as a proxy for targeting. That's how we think of it a lot of times. It's the same as doing demo targeting to a certain extent, because I know this site is skewed very heavily toward this demographic. Therefore, just by buying on that site, I'm indirectly targeting to that user base, and that's why you can command those higher CPM rates for those content categories. It's because you're indirectly doing targeting without having to do the cookie level targeting.
Yeah, it's a good point.
If I can work with a very small publisher and own the majority of the inventory,
Yeah.
you know, that's an incredible proposition to our brands. As long as it's the focus, correct audience, that will be more likely to engage. So I don't need to just have a complete reach play. If they can provide something that is custom and unique that our audience will be interested in engaging with, then there's tremendous value in that. And I think that's definitely a shift over the last couple of years.
Yeah, so it's-
And to that point, I think that when I first started at Break, there was only 10 of us, and it was just, I was the first salesperson, and now our sales organization's about 70 people.
Wow.
And to be selling Break way back in the day, and it was just a single site. I mean, I know what you're going through, and it was empowering because you're kind of defining the product as it goes along, the ad products. But to Julie's point, it was going to specific clients and advertisers that we could really customize and offer a creative solution rather than here's a standard kind of put you in a box, here you go, here's the package.
Yeah.
So that's how I think we really got off the ground, is going and having relationships, one-on-one relationships with the client and agencies about specific brands and really customizing each program and giving a high share of voice and really customizing the whole experience and integrating the brand into the user experience where it wasn't over the top. I think that's where we have a huge win. So we kind of go both ways now, where we still have a very integrated experience on a lot of our kind of custom campaigns, but then we have the massive reach to just do reach plays. So kind of
Where we can blur the lines between content, editorial, and advertising.
Ah, yes.
It's really good.
Oh, we never got to come back to brand and entertainment, but
Yeah.
I think we're out of time unless someone wants to ask a question on brand and entertainment. So I have about 7 minutes left. Are there any questions from the audience?
I have a video network. I consider myself like the Ted Turner of online video, meaning that it's all public domain. Anyway, I built an audience, 5 million viewer minutes on one, 3 million on another, which is a very target. One is religious and the other is just public domain stuff. How do I get to you guys? Because I would like to take it to a different level. It's nice to do it for free, but how do I get to you guys?
So when
Which
you say
guys?
you guys, there's a bunch of different people up here. So first of all, Julie, right.
The
Here she
buyer.
is.
The buyer on the other
Yeah, Julie, you want to try to take that one?
Well, I think you start with sort of the basics. Put together a compelling media kit. Find out at the agency who does what. Don't just cold call, hey, what do you work on? Because I probably won't give you my time, quite frankly. There's a lot of phone calls coming in. So if you can identify places in which your solution can help the advertisers that we support, we represent, and have a very specific idea of how we could work together. Send that in an email, do a call, say, hey, can I get 10 minutes of your time? Can I get a meeting? Can I show you our solution? And eventually we will get to you if it's a viable solution. And you have, within the media kit, we've seen something intriguing and something that maybe isn't offered by many competitors. We'll hopefully get to you.
This comes back to this notion of small outlet can, if they have something very focused, can attract the attention of a brand or the agency representing that brand. But you need to figure out like who are the people watching your videos and what messages would they, or what brands would they be really good fit for. And then agencies are strapped for resources. Like every agency person I've talked to, it's a wonder Julie can be here. Like every agency person I've talked to in the last couple of years seems to never have enough staff to do what they're doing, and each person is doing 3 jobs. And it's so the more you can also offload for them and say, look, I know I have 2 minutes of your time. I know you have this brand. I know they're trying to achieve X because I've seen their ads in other places. I can infer that. I can figure that out. And here I have a solution for you. It's going to make your life easier and actually help you achieve your goals. That's
Do
something.
your homework.
Yeah, do all your homework. Be totally prepared and give them a solution, not one more thing to deal with. And also, you should be talking to the ad network. So Kelly mentioned a minute ago, maybe you could just say again, like when you first started out, like did you just like cold call the various ad networks? And by the way, the ad networks are, well, I can tell Adaptee has a marketplace you can join, as Kelly mentioned. There's also
If you
big
wanna
ad
talk
networks
to me
like Tremor,
afterwards, I'll be happy to
Video,
talk
and
to you.
Rightroll, and Yumi, and Spot Exchange, and there's a whole bunch of them. And these guys are actually often much more open to working with smaller sites because
Exactly.
they're packaging them together when they go to the agency. So that would be a very good place to start as well.
Yeah. I think an effective strategy also is use the networks to kind of work out the bugs also in your own kind of sites. Because the worst thing you can do is kind of go to the agency
Yeah.
and a campaign falters because of some technical issue or some reporting issue or something like that, because you're going to get on the blacklist, and it's 20 times harder to get off the blacklist than it is to get
There's no
your
real
site
such
sold.
list.
Which is why we've been around for almost 2 years now, and we still are barely doing direct, because I feel like we're not ready yet. There's no rush, you know?
Right.
Our audience isn't ready yet, we're not totally ready yet.
Cool, let's try another question.
Yeah.
I think it was you, Ted, you were saying that the video ad network strategies have changed over time from when they started out. Can you talk more about how that's changed?
Sure.
And then also just how do you see the relationship between video ad networks and ad exchanges or video ad exchanges in
Yeah.
the future? Do you see them both, video ad networks moving toward an exchange model, or do you see them coexisting?
Great questions, too. In terms of how their model has changed, most ad networks, the bigger ones, have all moved to a different model that's called the arbitrage model. And instead of just going to a set of smaller publishers and representing them and giving them a revenue share back, that's how the representation model works. That still exists, it's just a smaller portion of the market. A lot of the ad networks, particularly in video where supply is constrained, there's more demand than supply, as we were just hearing about a minute ago. What they'll do is they'll actually go and buy up inventory in advance in chunks from the individual publishers. So I presume, I hope you can confirm if it's true or not, but Kelly probably gets calls from the sell side guys inside each of these ad networks calling up and saying, hey, Kelly, how about X dollars CPM for the rest of the year? And then Kelly has a very hard decision to make about whether or not to take that deal. No, you just take it. It depends on the
Well,
CPM.
no, I don't.
You don't take it.
No, you don't get that call?
No, I get those calls all the time.
Yeah, okay.
It's a good problem.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good problem to have. But
Yeah, no, it's a good problem to have, you're right.
yeah, but you have to make decisions then about, the tricky part is that when ad networks approach you with that kind of offer, then you have to make decisions about, is a better offer about to come tomorrow, or is this the best offer right now? What's the value of my inventory next month? Platforms like AdaptTV or other supply-side platforms can help you
Can
with
I
that.
just say something?
Yeah,
I
please.
actually trust the technology that I have and let people bid it up
That's
in
good.
real time every day. And I think I already mentioned what that technology is, so
Right.
I'll
Well, I
stop
didn't
right
actually
there.
put Kelly here to plug
So-
AdaptTV at all.
No,
So
and
stop.
he didn't, but I'll
Okay.
stop. So.
Anyway, but there are supply-side platforms and they can help you sort of make
Yeah,
decisions.
there are others. but-
So in terms of where networks fit with exchanges, it's a longer conversation. Briefly stated, I think exchanges have largely started to disintermediate ad networks from the publishers. It's not complete. Ad networks still do have relationships with publishers, and most ad networks you talk to are very proud of their relationships with their publishers. But it's become harder for ad networks to have direct relationships with publishers because each publisher is usually using a supply-side platform that has some sort of exchange. And so ad networks have actually, in general, very gross generalization, Brian, you can tell me if you agree or not, but because you have a network part of your business, have been pushed more towards the buyer in the sense that they have spent more of their resources trying to make sure they can deliver really great value to the buyer. And sourcing the inventory is now much more of a portfolio approach. There'll be some direct direct publishers. Sometimes they source on exchanges as well. And but the network has really sort of been forced to work with the exchanges. And some of them choose not to, but many of them do. Fair?
Fair enough.
Okay, good. Other questions? Oh, we got to wrap it up. Sorry, guys. Okay, we're out of time. We'll all stay for a few minutes over here so you can ask us questions if you have more. Thanks so much for attending. And